Hello there, folks, and welcome to the program. My name is John Feakes, lead pastor of New Life Sanctuary Church in Winnipeg. And in today's program, we want to discuss that branch of philosophy known as epistemology. Okay? Now, don't let that word frighten you. It's just a big fancy word for the study of knowledge. Epistemology, study of knowledge. In epistemological studies, we want to ask and hopefully answer questions such as, what is knowledge? What is the nature of knowledge? How do you go about acquiring knowledge? What factors are involved in the knowing transaction? These are all epistemological questions, and we want to think very seriously about epistemology, about knowledge, and how we might best go about acquiring legitimate knowledge. Now, as a Christian, I'm going to approach this the way I approach every other area of study in my life. I'm going to go to the Bible. And in the Bible, we are told very clearly, categorically, that in Christ are deposited or hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Well, that means, on my interpretation of that verse, if I take it seriously, it means that any knowledge that I claim to have, I can thank Jesus Christ for that. See, Jesus is God, and he knows everything. Nothing has surprised the Lord Jesus. From all eternity, he has known everything that's true, and he will know everything that's true into eternity. And so knowledge, we want to say, is original with the Lord Jesus, with God. And to the extent that we know anything, we're just sort of derivative small k knowers. Christ is a capital K knower. He knows all things, and he has from all eternity. To the extent that we know something, he has either imparted that knowledge supernaturally, he has revealed to our heart of hearts and into our minds, into our spirits, certain truths. You know, developmental scientists are telling us now that little children come into the world with certain innate knowledge. They come hardwired, pre-programmed with certain knowledge. They have knowledge, for example, of what to do with their empirical experiences. They know how to reason inductively. You see, you come into the world pre-programmed already with innate knowledge to help you navigate through this life. And you acquire knowledge as you navigate through life too. And this is, on a Christian view, because Christ has granted you, gifted you with the proper epistemic equipment, rational and cognitive faculties that were designed for the express purpose of you acquiring true knowledge, justified true belief, okay? So that's the Christian perspective on this thing. But whether you're a Christian or not, the project of philosophy has been to acquire truth about the world. And so we want to be careful to choose an epistemological methodology, a method of rational inquiry that will best get us to true conclusions. I think that has really been a major project of philosophy. How do we learn true things about the world? And so whether you're a Christian or not, you want to choose an epistemology that best gets you in contact with the truth. Now, right off the bat here, we want to discover the very clear relationship between your metaphysical commitments, remember your commitments about what you take reality to be, and your epistemology, your theory of knowledge. There is an intricate, intimate relationship between the two. And I'll just give you an analogy here, okay? And maybe this will be helpful to you, and this will bring out that relationship between metaphysics and epistemology. Let's say, and I'm getting this analogy from Dr. Bahnsen. It's not original with me. I think it's a very good analogy, so I'm going to use it, but I give him due credit. He says, supposing you wanted to sort good apples from bad apples, okay? And you had before you a variety of apple sorting machines. And obviously now, if you want to sort good apples from bad apples, if that is your goal, you're going to want to purchase to yourself the machine that is best at sorting good apples from bad apples. This seems very low level. This doesn't take any philosophical sophistication to understand that. But when you're making your choice of which machine to purchase, what do you have to have already in your mind? The answer is you already have to know what a good apple is. what is a good apple? What are the diagnostic features of a good apple over and against the diagnostic features of a bad apple? You already have to know good from bad. And then you can go about choosing which apple sorting machine is going to suit your purposes, okay? Now, when you're choosing an epistemology, when you're choosing a specific avenue to truth, a specific sort of rational inquiry, you want to choose one that best gets you in contact with the truth, don't you? The one that best leads you to true conclusions. But what do you already have to have in your mind? Some knowledge of what already is true. So you already have to know what the truth is to profitably, intelligently choose an epistemology. So you can see epistemology is informed by your metaphysics, intimate relationship there. And how do you know about the truth? I mean, you're walking into this thing with what? Faith commitments. Metaphysical faith commitments. You already have a faith commitment to what you take reality to be. The Christian has a faith commitment to metaphysics too. We take reality to be, in the last analysis, two things. God, and then everything else. God the Creator, and then the created order. And we have some faith commitments about who this Creator is. We want to say He's all-powerful and all-knowing, and He is omnibenevolent, He is perfectly good. He doesn't lie to people. He reveals truth to people. He runs the world in such a way that you can count on law-like regularity. You can reason inductively, profitably. It will get you to true conclusions and so on. We believe that this God really is the prescriber of objective standards of reason and moral conduct. You see, we're getting our faith commitments from the declarations of Scripture. And a funny thing happens when you do that. All of a sudden, you are able to answer many of the tough philosophical questions that have been puzzling philosophers for centuries. Let God be God, and He can answer those questions for you. Now, if you don't want to let God be the foundation for your epistemology, then you only have so many options. And I don't think any of these options really do as an appropriate foundation for knowledge. I don't think that those kinds of commitments really account for knowledge in the way that knowledge needs to be accounted for, okay? So in this program, we want to look at a couple common ways that people have tried to account for and acquire knowledge apart from God, okay? The first way is known as common sense foundationalism. See, foundationalism is this philosophy that says that we must find some kind of rock-solid foundation for all our knowledge acquisition, something that you really just can't doubt. And we sort of talked about Descartes already, haven't we? He was sort of a rational foundationalist, but we're talking about common sense foundationalism here. And here, common sense foundationalism works like this. You start with, as a given, apparently publicly accessible facts that you can't really seem to give up. These are things that you need to sort of assume in order for you to just kind of navigate through this life. These are faith commitments to things like, for example, the external world actually exists. The world external to your mind is real. There are other minds would be another one of these common sense beliefs. You know, you see people walking around in your empirical experience. Some of them are smiling, some of them are crying, some of them are frowning, some of them look angry, and so on. You just take as a faith commitment that there's a mind there at work, and that these people are not just automatons or puppets or something, and they're just pulling faces. That there are real thoughts, there are real emotions there behind those facial expressions, and so on. Those are common sense beliefs, okay? Now, what's the problem with starting with common sense beliefs? Well, you can start with common sense beliefs, I guess, as a proximate starting point, but is it an appropriate foundation for knowledge? And I say it isn't, you see. One of the reasons why it's not an appropriate foundation for knowledge is because common sense foundationalism seems to want to equate incorrigibility with infallibility. You know, the compulsiveness with which we hold to a belief is somehow, on this view, an indicator of that belief's infallibility. And that is a tremendous philosophical mistake to equate the two. You see, as a Christian, I just cannot give up my belief in God. I'm incorrigible in that sense. It doesn't matter what you show me, I'm never going to deny Jesus. I sound like Peter there, but I'm a born-again man in the church age, and I believe that God has me, and he has me forever. I'm never going to give up my belief in Jesus. Doesn't matter what you show me. My belief is incorrigible, okay? And are you going to say now that my belief in Jesus is infallible? I don't think if you're a non-believer, you're going to grant that. Incorrigibility does not equal infallibility. And even if it did, I mean, think about it. I can't give up my belief in the laws of logic being anything but non-material and causally effete, and therefore generated by something greater than the laws of logic, something greater certainly than humankind who are subject to these laws. And I would say that something is God. Okay, for just as an example there, I just can't give up my belief in God as the very locus and paradigm of objective morality and rationality. So common sense foundationalism, it seems to me, tries to equate incorrigibility with infallibility, and that's a tremendous philosophical mistake, okay? Now, another kind of foundationalism is called perceptual foundationalism. And on this view, you can secure a unchangeable, secure foundation when you appeal to things like first-person, present-tense, perceptual experiences, okay? Like, for example, I am right now speaking into a camera. That is my perceptual experience in the now, in this present moment. And so that would be my secure foundational starting place from which I can build further knowledge. I can acquire further knowledge. And that would be perceptual foundationalism. But think about this very clearly now, very, very carefully. Perceptual foundationalism is a universal proposition. It says that at all times and all places, for human beings, the only sure knowledge is the knowledge you have of first-person, present-tense perceptual experiences. You see, that's very local and limited, so you cannot reason outward now and make these general universal claims that this is the only way that you can secure sure knowledge. See? You see the problem there. Secondly, what about problems of illusion and delusion? We have all had experiences where our senses have deceived us. I mean, just think about it. Just go to McDonald's sometime. There, you want your senses to be deceived. Go to McDonald's and buy a strawberry milkshake. It tastes kind of like strawberries, but then read the ingredients. There's not a strawberry on the label. I mean, there's not one strawberry in that shake. It kind of tastes like a strawberry shake, right? We've all had our senses deceived. And so with perceptual foundationalism, first-person, present-tense perceptual experience may not be that sure foundation that we're wanting it to be, after all. Now, you may say, well, normal perceivers, under normal circumstances, they can use their first-person, present-tense perceptual experiences as a sure foundation for knowledge acquisition. But then I'm going to ask you now, what are all the possible distorting conditions that may warp your perceptions? Can you label them all? Do you know what all distorting conditions are? I don't know what they all are. What would they all be? If you can't even tell me what they all are, then you certainly can't tell me that you've eliminated all of them. And so once again, perceptual foundationalism really doesn't look like the sure foundation that we're wanting it to be. And, lastly, how would you reason outward? From a first-person, present-tense perceptual experience, like I seem to be talking into a camera right now, how do I reason out to more important things like I love you, or God exists, or other things regarding things like political theory, social theories, theories concerning justice or beauty or so on? How do you get from, I seem to be talking into a camera right now, how do you reason outward to these other things? You can't reason inductively or deductively just based on this alone. You need something more, okay? So perceptual foundationalism, I don't think is adequate. And perceptual foundationalism really is just sort of a species of a broader class of perceptual arguments we would call empiricism. And this is kind of the philosophy that says that you don't really know anything except those things that you experience through the five senses. Empiricism. You need to get out into the world and actually experience things through your five senses. But again, think about empiricism. When I make that claim to you, you only can acquire knowledge through the five senses. I'm making a claim to knowledge that I did not acquire through the five senses. Isn't that funny? Isn't that self-refuting? No, you did not learn through the five senses that the only way to acquire knowledge is through the five senses. Empiricism is really self-refuting in that regard, okay? It has not been observed to be true through the five senses. And furthermore, you already have to have some knowledge of what to do with this perceptual experiences, with your perceptual experiences. Where did that knowledge come from? Who told you how to reason inductively and so on? I mean, you talk to little kids, you teach a little child about the names of things. You point to something. You say, that's a chair, right? That's a table over there. And the child learns that those nouns go with those objects. But who taught him this convention of pointing and then blurting out a noun? How did he learn, how did he know that that's how you assign nouns to certain objects? You see, he's come into the world with that language convention already programmed into him. And then later on, you know what he'll do? He will combine terms that he's learned from us in ways that he's never seen before. And nevertheless, they are legitimate in accordance with language convention. Now, who taught him how to do that? You see, we do come into the world hardwired with some innate knowledge on how to do certain things. And I say that knowledge comes from God. But in any case, empiricism just does not seem like an appropriate foundation, an unshakable foundation for knowledge acquisition. Too many questions are left unanswered. And again, you have the problems of illusion and delusion with empiricism, okay? Well, on the other side of the ledger, you have a different approach to knowledge, and this is called rationalism. Rationalism says, look, we know that our senses deceive us, so stop trusting them as a surefire foundation for knowledge, and instead just think rationally. Just think logically, rationally, carefully, and in your mind you will reach true conclusions about things. Okay? Now, what is the problem with this kind of thinking? Well, here's a huge problem with it, and this is the problem the Greeks faced. See, the Greeks walked into this thing, many Greek philosophers walked into this thing, thinking that any true belief, any truth that was out there, it was attainable by the human mind. Whatever is true, give us enough time, and the human mind is capable of apprehending that truth. But they quickly learned that human minds are finite. They are frail. They are error-prone. We all have personal histories that include what? Countless mistakes we've made in our thinking. So rationalism, right off the bat, is facing a serious, serious obstacle, and that is the human mind. We make all kinds of mistakes. Rationalism is not a surefire foundation for knowledge acquisition. We need something a little more secure than rationalism. Furthermore, who's prescribing these laws of logic according to which the rationalist feels that we are all obligated to order our thinking in accordance with? Well, I say that would be God. The human mind is just not capable of generating, I think, universal standards of right thinking. Rationalism, and there's lots of problems with rationalism, but I'll give you one more. In the history of philosophy, we've had strict rationalists who said we're just going to stay within the confines of the human mind and we're going to reach true conclusions about things. But don't you see, different men who attempted that came away with very different metaphysical conclusions. Some rationalists ended up being monists. They said, my rationalism, my strict rationalism, brings me to the conclusion that ultimate reality is just one, that all of reality is one being with a single nature. Other rationalists said, no, my rationalizing, my rational thinking, my rational deliberation has brought down for me the conclusion that reality comes down to many things. Plurality is ultimate. Some rationalists have said, no, reality is actually two things, dualist in their metaphysics. See, how can rationalism be the secure foundation for knowledge acquisition when different rationalists have come away with very different and conflicting metaphysical conclusions about the world? Well, Immanuel Kant said this debate that was going on between the rationalist and the empiricist, he said this was the scandal of philosophy. It threatened to destroy science, okay? And Immanuel Kant came into the world and he said, look, I'm gonna give you a solution to this horrible problem that threatens philosophy. The empiricist coming against the rationalist, telling him he needs to get out into the world. Don't just rely on frail human minds. And then the rationalist saying, hey, empiricist, your perceptions can deceive you. Your five senses can deceive you, and so on. And the thing went back and forth. Immanuel Kant said this, listen, guys, the mistake we're making is that we are looking at ourselves as passive recipients of knowledge. What we need to understand is that the human mind is very active in knowledge acquisition. And as a matter of fact, Kant said to the rationalist and to the empiricist, you may as well give up trying to get the mind in contact with the world out there as it actually is. He said that's impossible. The actual world, as it really, really is, what he called the noumenal world, is inaccessible by human perception and by the human mind. It cannot be touched or apprehended. All we really know is the world as it appears to us. That this was Kant's brilliant contribution to science and philosophy. He said, all we have is our experiences, our perceptual experiences. We come into the world and we experience certain things, and everything we touched gets processed through our epistemic equipment, and we superimpose upon our experiences things like causation, space, time, location, all such things like that. He says we are absolutely creating really the world that we're living in perceptionally. We're doing that. We're creating the world. And so he said the only world we really know is the phenomenal world. It's the world as it appears to us. So he says, if you can accept that, if you can come to grips with that, then let's just operate in the world as it appears to us. And his claim to fame is that he saved the scientific enterprise. And I don't think he really saved the scientific enterprise at all. I think he undercut the validity of reason, the validity of genuine knowledge acquisition. I think he undercut the validity of scientific inquiry. And the reason why I say that is because think about Kant's claim. He said, you got an actual world, the world as it really is, and you don't know anything about it. It is an absolute, complete mystery, forever shrouded in secrecy and darkness. We'll never get in contact with it. That's the real world. And then you have the noumenal, or I should say, the phenomenal world, the world as it appears to us, after we've superimposed certain categories of thought upon our experiences. He said, that's the only world you know. You don't know the world as it really, really is. Well, first of all, Kant, you are being self-refuting in the things you're saying. You tell us that the world as it is cannot be apprehended, cannot be understood, and then you go ahead and make all kinds of claims about the world as it actually is, right? That seems to me very self-refuting. But even more damaging to that view is this. If you don't know anything about the world as it really, really is, if you don't know anything about that noumenal world, then you don't know that at any time and for any or no reason that noumenal world can't just intrude into the phenomenal world. And once again, we're seeing that on a non-Christian view, perspective on things, chance really is ultimate. Anything could happen anything could have happened, anything might be happening right now for any or no reason, and that includes everything out there in the world and anything that could be happening within the neural firing patterns of my own brain. Chance really does become ultimate in anything but a Christian world and life view, and that undercuts the validity of all reason, all knowledge claims. It's all worthless. You just cannot account for the knowledge you claim to have on anything but a Christian worldview. On the Christian worldview, the God who knows everything created this world with a plan and a purpose. He guarantees law-like regularity. He tells us that he informs his creatures. He gives us the truth. And he tells us the truth about the world, about himself, and about who we are. And therefore, he endorses our going out into the world and investigating the world scientifically, logically, rationally. He says that your empirical experience does count for something. You can reason outward from your specific instances. You can draw general conclusions that are probably true from your experimentation. The Bible endorses that kind of thinking. And it's the kind of thinking that we employ all the time, isn't it? See, if you'll just let God be God, he can account for the knowledge we claim to have. And he can make our pursuit of knowledge just so much more profitable. And that's my encouragement to all of you who are watching this, okay? Well, we went a minute overtime here on this program. I hope that wasn't too burdensome for you. I hope that this program was helpful and encouraging to you. And I just encourage you to continue on investigating these things. I think that you'll be very blessed in doing so, okay? Well, thank you so much for stopping by, friends. I look forward to visiting with you again in the very near future. Until then, take care and God bless you.